Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
And we have with us a very special guest, Travis Tate. Welcome to the show, Travis.
Hello,
hey, thanks for having me, guys. Nice to see you all.
Welcome.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Travis. Where can we find you? What do you do? Who are you? Why are you on our show?
Why am I on your show? That's very good. You're probably asking yourself that. I just invited myself, everybody. Full disclosure. No, I'm a stand-up comedian. My name is Travis Tate. Of course, it says on the little thing right there. I don't know if you can read that. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of pretty much everything nerdy and particularly professional wrestling. I love this movie, so I'm happy to be on here. You can follow me at Travis Tate Funny on pretty much everything, all the social media stuff. And I have a podcast myself. It's called Late to the Party with Travis Tate, which I do with my buddy Jake Dahl. And we just kind of talk about nerdy stuff and have fun with it.
I'm so proud of you for remembering your podcast, Travis. We've done a number of panels together at different conventions, and that seems to be something whenever I push my podcast. Oh yeah, hey, I have a podcast too. I should probably remember that.
I usually forget as well, so don't feel bad about that. I noticed on your little intro you had SLP. It plays in SLP on the little VHS thing. For the young people out there, that is like the dial-up of VHS. That was the least quality.
Yeah, but you get the most content.
I mean,
that's true.
That's how you explain us. We're the least quality. That's us.
we are the least on one of those.
We are the least quality on a mediocre platform. Let's not go any deeper. If we go deeper, it's just going to start hurting my feelings.
You guys have video. I would never even attempt video on my podcast. At this point, we're just making phone calls. I don't even do the Zoom or this or anything. It's just, I'll just call you and we'll record it.
So StreamYard, Val kind of introduced us to this system that we use, this program that we use. And it is like the easiest thing. I love it. Like it is so easy, plug and play. And it gives us an audio recording at the end and everything. So like my job has become a lot easier since we've been doing StreamYard. I love it. Thank you, Val. So you mentioned the movie that we're talking about. It is Fighting with My Family. It is based on Paige, who is a professional wrestler. She kind of, I don't know when she started. I mean, it's only been within the last 10 years. I don't think she's been around that long.
It's like 2015, right around there, somewhere in there. Yeah.
And she kind of came along as the WWE itself was starting to transition from, they called it their Divas division, which by itself sounds really awful and sexist and weird. But it was like, even at 2015, it was much better than it was in the 90s when I was like in the prime of watching wrestling for female athletes. And she kind of came along and was one of the first that was really a good, solid wrestler. It wasn't just about the looks or what she could say on the mic, but she was a good, solid wrestler, came from a wrestling family and started what they call the women's revolution in the WWE. And now they've got top to bottom a lot of really good female athletes. And Paige was kind of a pioneer for that in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You had kind of Natalya Neidhart.
Yeah.
And what's the Glamazon's name? She's married to Edge. Oh, I can't. I just brain farted.
Anyway, is it like Lita? Isn't that her name? Lita?
Oh, Lita was a little bit before that, but
okay.
Beth Phoenix. That's it. Beth Phoenix.
Oh yeah.
They were kind of around there too, and they're legit, like really good wrestlers. But Paige was kind of the tip of the arrow for what is the women's revolution now, where you've got, Charlotte, you've got Becky Lynch, all these big names. She was kind of the one that like pierced through, and then they all kind of followed through and even expanded it even more. So,
yeah. I mean, you look top to bottom at who their female wrestlers are now, and like Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Asuka, like all of these are not what we typically would have seen previous to this, and it's really kind of cool. And they put on matches that are just amazing and phenomenal to watch. Another thing that I really like about this movie and that makes this really interesting is I was really big into the wrestling in the 90s. That's when I first got into it and really followed it quite a bit. And back then, kayfabe was still kind of a big deal. And like a
Right.
movie like this would never be made with permission from WWE. Like this was produced by WWE and they were all on board with it. And this totally breaks down kayfabe.
So for those that don't know, explain what kayfabe is.
So kayfabe is the fictional world of professional wrestling, like the stories.
Wait, it's
and
not
everything.
real?
So
It's kind of real.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just scripted.
It's scripted, yeah. But like kayfabe is like you don't want to break that. Like these characters aren't supposed to be characters; they're supposed to be who they really are.
Right.
And so, an example of kayfabe would be back in the day. If you were a babyface or a good guy, you couldn't be seen traveling with a heel or a bad guy because you wouldn't be friends because the heel is the bad guy and the babyface is the good guy. And so that was kind of kayfabe, and they wanted to make because it is scripted and because there's that, it's fake kind of mentality, they wanted everything to be as real as possible. And so you were your character all the time. But that has been broken down a lot over the years. And this is an example of that where we get to kind of pull the curtain back and see professional wrestling behind the scenes.
I really enjoyed this movie because I don't really know anything about wrestling at all. I don't follow wrestling. I maybe watched it a couple of times when I was younger because it was on. You guys know how much I love The Rock, but like I don't think I've ever watched him actually wrestle except for on memes and stuff. So to watch this movie and not really know, like I understand what wrestling is and I understand what the WWE is, but I just never got into it. But this, outside of that, this is a really good story. It's a really relatable story, told very well. And I love the characters in it. So many fun spots in this film. I've seen it a few times now, and I have to say, when it first came out and it was being marketed, I was like, I don't know about this film. I don't know if I want to go to the press screening. It doesn't seem, and I didn't really care for the name of the movie. It kind of made me think it was something else. Like I didn't quite understand what it all meant. And then I went and saw it and I was like, oh, okay, this was actually really cool. And I've seen it a few times now. And so you do not have to be into wrestling to enjoy this film.
Yeah, I'm with Val. I grew up in wrestling back in like the 80s. I was the Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Bret the Hitman Hart days, and not as much in the 90s and beyond. But I feel like the marketing was not very good for this movie. I remember it came out. I remember that it got really pretty good reviews, but the marketing, it didn't excite me to go see this movie. And it was like, it's been on my list. I watched it last night for the first time and it's been on my list, but it was just like, yeah, I'll get to it one of these days. So I'm really glad that you guys did it. And it was fantastic because I'm a huge Florence Pugh fan from her work in Midsommar. And I was like, this girl looks really familiar. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Florence Pugh. I've heard she was really good in the Little Women. I didn't see that one. And she's in the upcoming Black Widow, where she plays Scarlett Johansson's sister. Incredible actress, and it was really fun to see a different side of her than Midsommar. But and it was surprising too. I didn't know Stephen Merchant directed it. A lot of people in this movie that I love as comic film, but just never got around to. So I really feel like the marketing did kind of let this thing down.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think any time that WWE puts out a movie, it kind of, even with good or bad marketing or whatever, I think it typically kind of just gets pushed aside because they haven't really put out anything good until this movie. Like they'll put stuff and it's fun or whatever, but this was very different for them, and so I agree. I don't know that it was very well marketed, but it is a really, really solid movie, and
it's
really
a good movie.
One of my favorite things about it was seeing Lena Headey from Game of Thrones play a character that is nothing like any character I've seen her play before. Because she's been in other movies that she's done a great job. But I love this because it was just so like opposite of anything she's ever done. One of my favorite scenes of the movie is when they invite the girlfriend and her family over to dinner.
Yes.
And
Yes.
she's like, let me tell you about how we met. It was so romantic. And the parents are like, oh, we like romantic. And she's like, so I was going to kill myself.
Yeah.
And he just got out of like a 7-year prison stint. And then they're like eating like,
Yeah.
we're from Draper. We don't talk to people like you.
Yep. It was, and as they were trying to avoid swearing, but they would still say like really inappropriate stuff. Like, when they talked about his leg bending both ways, and she's like, "Oh, well, you got to see this part of his body," and she used a term that I won't use because we're live streaming and whatever. And they're like, "Oh, sorry. I mean, you should see his penis." And like, "Oh yeah, that was really what was wrong. Was the word you used?" But no, it's totally fine if you use which we've talked about on this show, where it's okay if you use the correct anatomical term.
Anatomical.
Yeah. So. Yeah, this is a really the actors in it do a really good job of playing the characters, very true to life. I've never been a professional wrestler, but from what I understand, you think about the WWE and you see all the glitz and the glamour behind it, but then you see him running this little promotion up in Norwich, England, and it's not glamorous at all. And I think by and large for wrestlers, that's kind of what the life is, unless you make it big in the WWE.
I think it's honestly a lot like stand-up comedy, because there's a few at the very top of the triangle that are making buttloads of money. Can I say buttload?
Yeah, buttloads of money.
You did. So.
And everybody else, it gets smaller and smaller as far as where the money's at, and then it gets down to the people that are just doing it for the love of it, and that's where they're at. Is they just love doing it, and they honestly believe, the characters believe, the reason that they're even together and they've made what life they have is because they got into wrestling and just kind of bonded over that. So that's why it's such a huge thing in their family, because it's kind of like it's the core of their family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that kind of backstory there, that it is really what holds their family together and really what saved their family. I mean, he talks about his days thieving, and she comes out one day and she's like, yeah, and there were guns and money on the table. And I was like, this really kind of has to stop.
Hey, listen, if I have to go back to robbing banks to support this family, I'll do it.
Yeah, and he said it multiple times. She's like, no, we're not going back to that. We can have Roy do it, or whatever. But like the one who's already in prison, it's fine.
All of those comments really put a lot of pressure on Paige, to the point where she didn't really understand, like, if she was doing it for herself or if she was doing it because that's how she was brought up and that's all she knew. And so I really love the moment when Vince Vaughn is in this movie. I'm hit and miss with Vince Vaughn fan. Like, sometimes I'm like, ugh, Vince Vaughn, and other times I'm like, okay, I think this was really good. This was just enough Vince Vaughn for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just enough. And so, he says, so why are you doing this? And she says, my entire family does it. I've been doing it my whole life. Okay, but why do you want to do it? And she repeats it. My family does it. I've been doing it my whole life. And it really made her think, like, why do I do this? This is all I know. And she really, it was the story of her figuring out who she was outside of her family, which I think a lot of people can relate to. But I love, I don't want to skip over the fact that her dad is Nick Frost, who is a great comedian in his own right, but he does a lot of British comedy. So a lot of people don't really recognize him when he's not standing next to Simon Pegg or doing something like totally ridiculous. And I loved him in this role because it was a little, as much as this movie was a comedy, it still was serious. Like, there were serious moments, there were thoughtful moments, because it is based, on her story. But he just created kind of this island of misfit wrestlers in their small town, where they take their little van around and they pick up all the misfits and they're singing in the car. These kids that normally would not have a place to go. Even the blind kid wrestles, which was so cool, because he's like, they're up there and they're running through different moves. And he's like, I'm just here for the smells. That was like one of my favorite lines in the movie, because know that with all of those little kids and teenagers in that wrestling room, it's not like ventilated. There are a lot of smells in there, and they're like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? You might as well just get up here and try it. And I just thought that was so neat, like the story inside of the story of kind of making the misfits of the small town have a place to be.
I loved the line when they're trying to get him in the ring. And she's like, look, you're a blind teenager. What are you going to do? Go home and listen to porn? Like, get in here. Like, what else have you got going on? Like, and it was just some really good lines. And speaking of the misfit wrestlers, one of my favorite lines in the movie is when she says to Zach, who thinks that because he didn't get his shot at the WWE, that like everything he worked for was a waste. And she says, you're doing some amazing things. You're teaching a blind kid to wrestle. You're doing this, you're doing that. And she said, just because you don't have millions of people cheering you on doesn't make it any less amazing. And I love that, because I think there are a lot of people who are just your average Joe or average Jane, I guess, because, equal rights and stuff. And like that are just going about their lives and their business doing amazing things, but they don't recognize it because they're looking at, well, if I had gotten a break and I was here and I was up and people knew and recognized it, I'd be living the dream, but they don't realize the amazing and important contributions that they're making, quietly going about their day. And it doesn't make it any less amazing just because everybody doesn't know about it.
I think that's a really good point, because it shows without like beating you over the head with it and making it the message of the movie. People need a purpose. People need something to do. People need, whether it's art, whether it's sports, whatever, whether it's math, you just need to find something that you enjoy doing and try to just master it. And it does so much for a person's self-confidence and gives them a purpose in life, and it makes them feel like they're making a difference. So I like that about the movie.
Math.
Me too. I hate math. I'm so glad my kids are all done in school now.
Yeah, there were just so many, I feel like, stories inside of the story again, and I feel like that's real life, because Paige, from the beginning, they kind of set her and her family up to feel like outsiders, and I love it because she's like this awkward, pale, dark-haired kid, and that's what I felt like when I was younger. Is I was just this pasty girl with long black hair that felt like I didn't belong anywhere, and then she gets to her camp with all of these other girls, and you automatically, when you're treated that way or you feel that way everywhere. And so she felt like she was the underdog everywhere and automatically thought that people were putting her down. And then she realized very quickly that it's not just about her. Other people have other lives. These women didn't have any bad thoughts about her. They were dealing with their own crap. She isolated herself, which I think for women, we do that a lot to ourselves, is we kind of put ourselves in this area. And then when we get in with other women, our brains just do this like weird psychotic thing where we just judge each other, or we think others are judging us. And I really liked the fact where those women are like, our looks have nothing to do with you. I have this other problem, and my son, and this and that. So she really had to grow and realize that there's more to life than just her little bubble, which I thought was really important. And she gained some knowledge and some new friends. And, it was really good, I think, for her to get out and leave on her own. And I'm glad she did that, because I think a lot of people get in that situation where they have to leave home. They get this opportunity, but they don't do it because it's very uncomfortable for them. But the fact that her family pushed her, regardless of why they pushed her, I think it was more for them than for her. But I'm glad they did.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say real quick, that scene on the bus is a very pivotal moment where she goes up to the other ladies and she's like, "You talk about me behind my back again, and I'm gonna wallop you." And it's such an important scene because it adds a lot of heart when you realize that those women weren't talking about her. They were talking about one of the other ladies' children, and how she hadn't seen that child for quite a while. And it really humanized them. It humanizes her. It was a real character instead of just a caricature.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I feel like that scene in particular, because I rewatched it again this morning, so it would be fresh in my mind. And it's normally in a lot of movies, there's a trope where she'll do something to save one of them, and then they accept her, something.
Mhm.
But this showed, this is something that humans do. I do it myself. We get in our own way. We invent problems for ourselves sometimes. And that's kind of what she was doing. Not to say that they were always super nice to her, because they weren't. There was times where they were kind of catty with her.
Sure.
But she kind of built that up in her head to where it was this huge thing, like the world is against me. And then once she realized, well, maybe they're just thinking about their lives just the way I'm thinking about my life. Maybe they're not obsessing with me. And then it allowed her to get over that obstacle and, be the best she could be.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I really related to that. And I'm glad, because I think we all as humans, we kind of put ourselves in these bubbles of what we think we are. And then we put that onto other people thinking that they're doing the same. So
Right.
I thought that was great. Again, I just love how this movie, you think that it's going to be just this like, on the surface movie that talks about wrestling and, this girl makes it and it isn't, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper, which is really nice. And of course I loved it when The Rock showed up.
Rock.
He said one thing that I really love, when the brother's like, hey, how do I be the next you? And he's like, don't be the next me. Be the next you. And I, it was such a after he like totally lays into him with his entire like rock speech that just I loved it so much, and he scared him, and then he's like, no, man, like that's how you got to go win over the crowd. You got to go perform. You got to be yourself, but don't be the next me. Be the next you. I loved it.
Well, and I like it too. He says, "This is me, but it's me amplified."
Yeah,
this is me on turn the volume all the way up to 11, and I do love that part because when he calls him an Oliver Twist, please, sir, can I have some advice? Dude, The Rock is just inherently charming. That guy's got charisma for days.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like right now on my screen, Val's head is on The Rock's body. I don't know if it's that way for you guys. But she's talking about The Rock and there's huge biceps. Those are pretty good biceps.
There we go.
The Rock, I believe that lines up perfectly. Yeah.
Val,
The Rock executive produced it, right? The movie?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, he was one of the
produced
producers.
it, and he pushed it for the story to get told, which I love. So it just makes me love him even more. But again, I was very, very surprised by this film. And if you've seen it once, watch it again, because there are some things that you probably missed just because you're, watching it thinking it's going to be one thing. But yeah, it was super enjoyable. And I, again, like when you guys were nerding around at the beginning of this podcast, talking about all of your wrestling jargon, I've heard of some of the names you've said, but again, I know nothing about it. And I totally was charmed by this film.
Hey, Val, Jake popped out of the feed, but he's wondering if you can add him back in.
Oh, I didn't know I needed to add him back in. There we go. No, you are grounded. You don't get to come back in. Once you're out, you're out.
So my power flickered off and then right back on, but it knocked my internet out. So it takes forever for the internet to come back on. So now I'm on my phone and it's less fancy. You can see behind me the green screen is just a green screen now.
You mean you weren't in front of a wrestling ring earlier?
I looked like I was.
I thought you built a wrestling ring in your basement. I was going to be so excited.
Well, it got me thinking, watching this movie got me thinking, I've got 6 kids. That's enough to start our own little promotion here.
Yes.
Yeah. Why not?
It'd be perfect.
Yes.
I have no training whatsoever, so we're probably going to end up killing each other because we don't know how to take a fall and stuff like that.
Take it till you make it, man.
Fine. That's how you make it. It's true.
I'm sure there's a full-on YouTube video.
Eventually, they're going to want to
how to train like a wrestler.
Oh, I'm sure there is. YouTube teaches me.
They're going to want to throw you on tax, though, Jake. Just so you know.
I know.
Am I cutting out?
No. I heard you. The tax thing, when he goes and he's doing that show after he doesn't make it, and they throw him on the tax, and he's sitting there and he's picking out the thumbtacks out of his back. I don't think people realize, especially even when they're having the dinner with his girlfriend's parents, and they say, "Oh yeah, it's all fake," and they're like, "Wait, it's not. If it was fake, would I have done this injury and this injury?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, people don't realize that some of that stuff, like, it's scripted, but when you're thrown on top of tacks, you're thrown on top of tacks, and it hurts. Like, like, I love the scene where he's sitting there with the wrestler, and he's like, "Okay, he's wanting to know if you're willing to take one of these," and he holds up a metal garbage can to the face, and he's like, "Well, what does it feel like?" And then he just punches him in the face with it. And he's like, "Oh, that's what it feels like."
I like when he's sitting in the room and he just throws a ball at that guy's balls. I'm like, what? You guys just do that when you're sitting around? You guys just throw balls at each other's balls?
No.
You wouldn't warn anybody if you're going to do that. You just go, catch.
So I was watching a behind the scenes something, and they were talking to Triple H, and who's a wrestler in the WWE, and he was saying the secret to taking a crotch shot is you just hope that somehow they miss your crotch. Like, that's the secret. There is like, and you just brace for the pain because it always hurts. Like, there is no, like,
aim for the upper thigh.
Yeah, exactly.
This is my favorite episode ever because you're talking about taking a crotch shot.
And he also said the word penis.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Just pray that you're not Andre the Giant if it's coming your way.
Well, I mean, and I want to touch on what Jake said. I saw an interview. I don't remember who it was with, but he's like, okay, you know that you're going to get hit in the head with a metal chair. You're still getting hit in the head with a metal chair, even though you know it's coming.
That's why they don't do it anymore. Because those guys were really taking shots to the head, and that's a lot of CTE that if it's not showing up now, because I've had concussions from playing football and stuff like that, and man, I can't find words all the time, so I can just imagine what these guys are going through. It's crazy that they ever did that they ever thought, yeah, it'll be fine.
Be fine.
Because you can see, like, I've worked with Mick Foley a few times, and the fact that he can actually go on a stage and tell jokes and tell stories is amazing. Because speaking of The Rock hit him in the head like 20 times with a steel chair in one match, just over and over, to the point that you can see backstage footage of Mick Foley's wife just like tearing into The Rock, like, why did you keep going, And he's like, well, I thought he was fine. He just kept saying, keep going, because he was concussed. That's why he said keep going.
Well, and like, they've got this documentary series on WWE Network right now called The Undertaker's Last Ride, which is amazing.
I love
it goes behind the scenes for The Undertaker, who is the one guy who never broke kayfabe, like, in his career ever.
See, and like, when he came on the scene, that's kind of when I started to leave. But yeah, I know The Undertaker.
He wouldn't go out in public as Mark Calloway, like, ever. But he's talking about when he lost for the first time at WrestleMania against Brock Lesnar, and he's like, I remember like getting ready for the match, and then that's the last thing I remember. I don't know when I got concussed, but he was out for the whole match, but he just kept going because he was that kind of a professional, and that's just like, that's the crazy thing that these guys do. They put their bodies through hell for entertainment, and it's just incredible. Like, it's amazing.
It's amazing that 20 years ago, it never occurred to anybody that the brain might get damaged if you hit it hard.
Right.
We were all just like, yeah, it'll be fine tomorrow.
Well, I mean,
shake it off.
To be totally fair, the NFL's still not totally convinced that
That's
the brain
true.
is that damaged if it gets hit
true.
that many times. So it's, but yeah, like, it's weird that nobody thought, well, what could possibly go wrong? You know how to take a chair shot to the head, right? Yeah, right. I just put my head there and take it. Yeah, exactly. I
now they just hit in the back. They hit him in the back.
Yeah, so now that's all they do is
the impact.
Yeah, because there's nothing to hurt back there.
Your spine. No,
your spine.
I know super kicks aren't really hitting him in the face, but man, they sell those. Whenever they do, you see a super kick, you're like, he's dead.
And like
person's dead.
I know part of how they sell it is like slapping themselves on the thigh and stuff like that for the sound. I look for it every time and I still miss it because I'm too focused on the super kick. Like, it's amazing how they do it. They do a really good job. Like, even being a fan my whole life and knowing some of the keys that they look for, some of the cues that they give each other, it's still hard to find it in a good match between two good wrestlers. Now, if they're not good wrestlers, you can see it and it's not really that great. But
that's where the art comes in. When people say it's kind of like, even in the movie they say it's a soap opera in spandex, and it is kind of a soap opera. It's kind of a ballet. It's, there's a little bit of stand-up comedy in there. There's some sketch comedy, and there is art to it. So when it is done right, so even though everybody says it's not real, it's this or this that. The reason, I'm 42 years old and I still watch it, it's because of all of that combined. There is entertainment value in there for me that I appreciate, just the time that they spend every day trying to perfect it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Go ahead, Tracy.
I was going to say, one of my other favorite scenes that I really liked is when he's talking to Paige about why Vince Vaughn, he's talking to Paige about why he didn't cast her brother. And he says, because he's going to be the guy who just goes from town to town and gets beat up. And he's going to be the one that's going to be willing to throw himself on thumbtacks and jump on, let somebody throw him off a 30-foot cage. And he's never really going to amount to anything in superstardom because he doesn't have the it factor. And I know because that was me. And that was a really poignant part. And I was really happy to see Vince Vaughn pull it off, because that's a tough line to walk, where he sells it well and it doesn't become saccharine. It doesn't become stupid. It doesn't become predictable. Like, when he said that, I was like, when he started that monologue, then I'm like, okay, I kind of figured where this is going. But up until that point, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
that's a tough job he has, to be the person that tells people you're not good enough. Yeah. I would never want that job. If people come up to
crappy job.
If people ask me to open mic, what do you think? I lie. I'm like, yeah, it was good. Keep coming. I don't want to be that person. I'm like, yeah, you're doing great. Keep going. I don't have it in me to be that brutally honest with somebody.
He's so good at it too. Like, when they're doing the tryouts in London, and he's like, he points to the one guy, he's like, do you have what it takes to be the next WWE champion? He's like, yeah, I'm going to be a champion. He's like, see right there. That's one of the key ingredients right there. You have to have a good attitude. That's so important. He said, now that's all you have. You don't have any of the other tools, but you've got that good attitude. So, and like, he just delivered some of those lines so well. Like, he was really, really good in this part, which is amazing to me, because I don't like Val said, he's hit and miss for me too. Sometimes Vince Vaughn is great and sometimes he's not, but this role, he was really, really good. Really well suited.
I really liked your speech. I really did. When I first heard it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Squeeze the horn. Enter pain. And I love it's like one of those old car horns.
Yeah.
It's like even more insulting.
So, now, while I was fixing my internet, I don't know if you guys talked about, how much this was about Paige kind of figuring out who she is, not just in the ring, outside of the ring, all of that. I love when The Rock's talking to him and he says, don't worry about being the next me, be the first you. And as a wrestling nerd, like, that's huge, because I get that the gimmicks that really get over with the fans are the ones that are based on who these people are, like, that are genuine most of the time. Undertaker is, again, a huge exception to that. But like, the gimmicks that really work are when people find something about themselves. Like when he says that as The Rock, that's just Dwayne Johnson turned up to 11, so as a wrestling nerd, I really love that. But I think there's a good message there for anybody. Like, don't worry about being the next, whoever the big person is in whatever career you're doing, but worry about being the first you and finding the way to bring out the best in who you are and what you bring to the scene, as opposed to trying to be somebody else.
Yeah, we already covered all that, but we let you talk it out so that you can.
That's a steel
All
chair
right,
to the
well,
face.
good night, folks. We'll see you later.
Val just drop kicked him from the top rope.
That's fair. So,
Schoolboy roll up.
We haven't had a that's fair in a while. Yes. Team Val.
Team Val. All right.
I'm staying neutral.
Very wise, Travis.
I don't know who decided to have me on here, so I'm just going to be quiet.
See, usually
No,
I'm
but
the one that takes the abuse.
I mean, I
It's
liked
true.
this movie so much that when I was done watching it, I went home and I kind of Googled more about her because I
Mhm.
wanted to know more about where she fit into the wrestling world. You know, because I have watched like some of the reality female TV
Mhm.
shows.
Mhm.
I don't remember like the two sisters. What is that
The,
like?
the
Diva?
Bella sisters. Yeah, there's
Bella
like,
Bellas, and then
I've
there's
watched a few
Total
of their
Divas.
shows.
yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of figure out like where she fit in what I knew. And so it was learning more about, how she really did pave a way for a new kind of female wrestler was very cool because they kind of end it as okay, she has arrived and they don't really tell you what she had to fight for after she finally got there, because I'm sure that's a whole nother movie. So it was very interesting to go on the interwebs and kind of Google more about her journey and that kind of stuff. So I mean, it says something about a movie that I thought was going to be very frivolous to the
Mhm.
fact that I've seen it a few times now and I wanted to know more. That usually doesn't come out of a movie like this for me. So, but I do love sports movies. They are my favorite regardless of the sport. And I was not disappointed.
Yeah, that last scene of the movie, I mean, she really did kind of come out of nowhere because
Yeah.
NXT is a big brand now. It's a brand on its own. But at that time, NXT really was developmental and it had a few people watching it here and there. But I didn't know who Paige was. I remember that episode of Raw where she comes out and won the title out of nowhere. And the way they did it in the movie, it actually I got like goosebumps and I'd seen it before. I saw it live and then I'd seen the movie previously, but I got them again this morning, just the way they built that up. And she just came out of nowhere and won the title. And like Val said, I mean, she's kind of had a rough go of things since then. I mean, there could be another movie there. I don't, if they want to go down there, I don't know. I mean, she had a neck injury, so she had to kind of retire. She was dating a wrestler that was abusive and got her hooked on like drugs, and she became an alcoholic and stuff like that. She got away from him, cleaned herself up. She made a comeback from the neck injury only to get injured again. And they try to find her places. They made her SmackDown of GM or the GM SmackDown for a while. And she still pops up here and there. She's still employed, even though they just got rid of like 30 people. They hung on to her because I think they do see value in her. It's just a matter of what to do with her because they definitely don't want her to go anywhere else because she's got talent. Even just talking in the ring, she can go out there and cut a promo on somebody that's pretty impressive. So, I mean, they definitely see the value still there. But, I've read that she wants to make a comeback again after 2 neck injuries. I don't know. That's pretty scary.
It's risky. Yeah.
But it's in her blood, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, and you hear about so many wrestlers that do that even after a serious neck injury. I mean, you look at one that's right now going on with Edge coming back and making a comeback. He was gone for 9 years or so. Like it was a long time, and just barely got cleared to come back. But one wrong move in the ring could end up, not just ending his career, but paralyzing him, like serious consequences.
Right.
But sometimes you just can't leave it. You know what I mean? You can't, it is like you said, Travis, in their blood. Like they're infected with it. Like she and her brother talk about in the film, like you make it sound like a disease. Yeah, we're riddled with it. Like there's no cure. And that's, I think that is it for a lot of these wrestlers. And it says something about how over she is with the fans, that WWE is making a movie about her, that there's interest there, that they haven't let her go, because really WWE, if you're not over with the fans, they don't care how talented you are. If you're not going to make them money in some capacity, they just let you go. They don't care. I
Right.
mean, Vince McMahon is all about making money, which is fine. He's a businessman. That's what businessmen do. But
one thing I
there's
wish
not
they
a lot
would
of
have,
loyalty there.
I would have mentioned, I wish they would have mentioned this in the movie is since The Rock was in it, when he first showed up, nobody cared. His name was Rocky Maivia. He was a baby face. He was all smiles and, hey guys, let's go. Let's do it. Let's go fight the bad guys. And
he was
just
so lame.
It was cornball to the fullest, and nobody cared. Everybody hated him. People would chant, die, Rocky, die.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad. And then he kind of took a little turn, I think he got injured, and then came back, got a little attitude, kind of got that swagger, got a little, telling people off in the ring and stuff like that. And that's when it kind of clicked. So there is this little voyage of finding your voice, is what comedians always say. But wrestlers have to do that too.
Yeah, they totally do. And he came in at a weird time because WWE was moving away from, or WWF at the time was moving away from kind of the big gimmicks like what he had in the really kind of comic booky type style, and into something more real and into the Attitude Era to compete with WCW and the NWO and all of that. And he did not go over well when he first showed up. He was lame.
There's so many letters. It's like NWA and OPP, and I don't know what you guys are talking about. I've heard them all before, but I don't know like where they fit in the wrestling universe.
NWA.
But so many letters.
MTV.
Different NWA.
TNT.
I know who NWA is. That's who I do know. NWA. I don't know.
This is the National Wrestling Alliance.
With WWE coming after WWF, but E really comes before F, where they're saying like we're better than you because we're
no.
They got sued by the World Wildlife Foundation.
Yeah,
that's why they can't use it anymore.
I was making a joke.
And then their tagline was "Get the F out." That's how they sold it to the fans. Get the F out.
Yep. Which has kind of been their attitude toward the fans a lot sometimes. Just get the F out.
That's true. That's true.
Whatever. No, it's interesting. This is a really good. If I were to show, if somebody were to ask like what to watch to kind of get into wrestling or whatever, this would be something that I would show because I think it kind of explains a little bit in depth in a way that, like you guys have mentioned, if you're not super familiar with wrestling, it's still engaging and you might find it interesting enough to go and find out more and look into it. Probably do that more than like the Dark Side of the Ring or something like that. That's probably going to turn a lot of people off to wrestling. Right. So
it's a good, even take wrestling out of it. It's a good family movie because
absolutely
the complex relationships within a family.
Yeah, it's great. And we watched it as a family, and now my 4-year-old goes around and says bollocks all the time. So it's totally fun.
Yay!
No,
I think it's a good message for parents too, not to put too much pressure on a kid. And then also, like, am I pushing this kid because I want them to be the best they can, or am I pushing them because I want them to meet my expectations?
I don't know, because if they wouldn't have pushed her, she wouldn't have done it. Like, so there's kind of this.
Yeah, there's a fine line to walk.
I mean, they pushed her, but they also just made it a part of what they did together. I think there's a big difference because I think there's a lot of parents that like push their kid to be like this all-star football player, but they themselves they're not involved in it. They just want them to do well. Whereas this was like an entire family thing that they did together. But yeah, anytime she kind of questioned it, they were upset. So it's just kind of like, okay, but if they wouldn't have pushed her, would she be where she is? But at the same time, maybe she would have figured out something else in her life she wanted to do. There's just all these what ifs. But I do love that her brother he didn't care that like she came home and she was special. Like he beat the crap out of her because she wanted to quit. And that was his dream too. And he knew that she had more in her. So, I mean, maybe we just need to do more of that, like beating the crap out of our sisters. I'm just kidding. I do not mean that. Do not do that.
There's a good lesson there too about dealing with, because it was his dream too. And he was crushed and he didn't deal with it well. And they cover that in the movie. And that's part of the reason he beat her up in the ring is because he was jealous. It wasn't just that she wanted to quit and he wanted to inspire her. It was also like, I'm going to take out my aggression on you right now. And it's a good way for us to learn, we need to be able to deal with disappointments in life, because life isn't fair. No matter how much you want something, there are movies out there that tell kids, if you want it bad enough, it's going to happen for you. And that's not reality. Reality is you're going to have disappointments every day in your life, probably. So if you can cope with that and get the tools to be able to deal with that, then you're going to be a much better person in the long run than even if you did achieve your dreams. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, now what? Now this didn't make me happy, because the dream wasn't going to make you happy. It's becoming a rounded person that's going to make you happy.
Yep. Totally agree.
Dad, can I watch YouTube?
Yup.
So,
This is
sorry,
We have a special ring appearance.
I want to watch
Can you go talk to
tacos on
Mom,
YouTube.
please?
That's my favorite thing on YouTube. I like watching taco videos.
And that's a good choice. Just taco videos.
Yes. Just watching them make all sorts of tacos. Tacos al pastor. That's my favorite.
Oh, you're speaking my language.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh,
So do you guys want to grade the movie?
This has been like my worst show.
How do you grade it?
We give it a letter grade, just a
Okay.
standard letter grade scale, not like the modified Utah out of school letter grade where like if you show up you get a pass, or if you don't, like you get a fail. Like no, it's like an A, B. Yeah. Well, hey, that's how I got my MBA, was on a pass fail program. I'll go for that 100%. No, we just give it a letter grade. So we'll start with you, Val, and then we'll go to Tracy, and then we'll go from there. That sounded like I was conducting a church program.
I thought it was very entertaining. I enjoyed it more than I thought that I would. I've definitely seen it more than once, and I would probably watch it again. So yeah, solid B plus area.
I would be right in the B plus area. I hadn't seen it before last night. I very much enjoyed it. I would watch it again. Great comedic talent, solid writing, heartfelt, good performances across the board, good messaging. Yeah, I really like this film.
What about you, Travis?
As a wrestling fan, I'm gonna go a little higher. I'm gonna say A-. And the only thing I would have changed about it, I would have liked a little more lead up to her debuting on Raw.
Yes.
There wasn't a lot of explanation. It just happened so fast. Like she didn't even know she was going to win the title. They almost made it at the end. They almost made it like it was Rocky, and she really was fighting AJ Lee in the ring and really did win. But there's behind the scenes stuff there. It would have been nice if they had just said, "Hey, we want to do this, and we believe in you, and this is what you've done to make us believe in you." I think that would have been a little bit better. But I'm going to give it an A- anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, because it's true. Like they were willing to go behind kayfabe a little bit and pull that curtain back a little bit, but they're like, yeah, but like in ring stuff, we're not quite ready to say that's scripted or whatever. So, which was a little bit weird. And I agree, a little bit more buildup would be good. I would say a B plus as well. It's just a good, fun, solid movie. Really, honestly, if you want to see behind the scenes what it's like to be a wrestler and to get in to the WWE, I think this is as good as anything else out there to see and watch. And for that reason, I would say a B plus. So
you guys have learned that I like most things, so I'm always going to grade things a little higher.
Yeah, that's true. We know you're the guy that's not going to be like, oh, you're awful. Just give it up.
Yeah, you already told us that. You already told us you have a hard time criticizing.
Yeah.
So we have to take your A- and probably bring it down like almost a 4th grade level to know where it really sits.
But B pluses are actually really good on this show. I think most of the movies that we pick on this show, we pick because it's movies that make us. It's movies that we do enjoy. Sometimes Tracy or Mayhem will throw out a C or a C-. I think there's one show, again, this show will never be seen or heard of again. It was seen live one time, and it's when we did Ready Player One, and I think we all gave that like D's or something like that.
I've never heard.
But usually on this show, we're in the B, the A-B range. So yeah.
All right. So thank you for joining us, those that watched us live here and those that will watch us after, not when we're dead, but like after the show's not live. We want to thank you, Travis, for being here. Let everybody know where they can find you again, so they can go follow you on all the social media stuff and follow your show.
Social media at Travis Tate Funny. That's what on all the platforms. And then my podcast is called Late to the Party with Travis Tate. And then, I'm pretty much only doing Wise Guys because there's no shows going on anywhere in the country. But hopefully I can get to a town near you and you'll come out and I'll make you laugh.
Funny guy.
Awesome.
Go check his stuff out.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he's pretty funny. Like, no, Travis is hilarious. I love working with you, Travis. We love having you on the show, and we'll have to have you back again sometime. And we really appreciate you being here. Our next show, we're going to have we have a bonus episode that's going to come out on Monday. You guys are going to want to come back to Facebook and see it. We'll set up a premiere for it. We are going to be reviewing and talking about the movie Just Mercy. It is available right now to rent for free on like any digital platform. I know I bought it on iTunes right now. It was $3.99, which is a steal of a price because this is a very good movie. And I think it's one that a lot of people need to watch right now to kind of put into context a little bit of what's going on throughout the country. And so we'll talk about that on Monday. But next week for our next episode, we're going to have another funny person on. We've got Eileen Dobbins joining us, and we're going to be talking about Heathers, I believe is what we decided for that one, correct? So that will be a lot of fun.
Dark, funny movie.
A cult comedy classic.
Yeah. So we're excited to talk about that one with Eileen. It'll be a lot of fun. So again, Travis, thank you for being here. Thank you everybody for listening. And you can find us everywhere on social media. We are at Movies That Make Us on Instagram, Movies That Make Us on Facebook, and then at Movies Make Us on Twitter. And of course, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more live videos. And thanks for watching, and we won't see you at the movies.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thanks, Travis. Bye, guys.